So thank you all so much for joining us.